Alright, so this video is for Dayna. So this is not a corn snake, this is actually a milk snake, but they are still considered colubrids, which basically means, in long story short in English, is basically they say on the colder side of things. Clocks always decide to go off at the best time. So what that means is they're basically going to stay on the cooler side of things, to where heat is not going to be the most concern with these guys. You're going to want to have a heat pad. For a snake this size, you're going to want something about like this big. They sell several different sizes. Their temperament's pretty neat. This has been, some years of work, but, they're very, very tame, very docile. Their temperament is, like I said, excellent, obviously. So, when you see a snake like this, you're going to see, this camera really doesn't show it, but you're going to see kind of a blue tint. That means that they are in shed. Snakes do not keep their skin as they grow. They will actually lose it. At this point in time, you're going to keep them very well hydrated. I would suggest putting a bowl of water in there big enough for them to soak. Some people say snakes will drown themselves. They're fucking stupid. A snake's not going to drown itself in a bowl of water, unless your snake is that special in the head. Mine are special in the head, and they haven't done that. So, you're going to want an aquarium that fits the size of the snake, because you don't want too big, but you don't want too small. I would say you want your housing to be a couple times bigger than your snake. Enough for him to, move around comfortably. But too big will stress them out and they will die. Because too big of an aquarium will actually kill them. But, as I said, you can find a little bit more helpful videos online. I'll send you the link to those as well. But this guy, like I said, it's the same thing as a corn snake. It's a milk snake. They're still colubrid, so they're still pretty easy to maintain. Generally, I feed him once every 2 weeks to maybe once a month, depending on the weather will affect their eating patterns. Now, you have two options of food. You have frozen, thawed, and you also have live. Now, the problem with live is you're going to get more nutrition, but you're going to have more of an issue with the mice hurting the snake. I prefer frozen thawed. However, I would recommend live, just because of the simple fact that some of these companies that are out there they're too big. I had 2 corn snakes that I actually had that did pass away from food poisoning from frozen rodents I did buy. And this, was, don't want to say the name of the company, but was a major one in the reptile industry. With these snakes, too, you want to handle them quite a bit, because the less you handle them, they're going to get more aggressive. There's also something called cage aggression. That's when you feed your snake inside of an enclosure instead of feeding them in a separate enclosure. Dayna, that's bullshit. I feed all my snakes inside their enclosures, because once they're fed, I don't want to mess with them. And that's another thing. When you're ready to feed your reptile, you're definitely not going to handle them for 3 days prior, and then 3 to 4 days, depending on the age of the snake, you're going to want to leave them alone. Make sure they have water, spot clean the bedding, make sure the cage is all good for 3 days, because for 3 days, you're going to want to leave them alone after they eat. This guy, about this size, 3 days after you eat, you're fine. Now, something a lot smaller, I would definitely recommend give them a little bit longer. Especially if you were to buy a bull python, which I would not recommend as a starter snake, although that was mine, and I've been through a mound of issues with her. So I've learned the hard way. But these guys are just Very simple. No, I know you're pissed off. He's in the shed, so he's mad. So, what else I leave out? Never use pine. Pine can kill any snake. It'll shut down the respiratory system and cause them heart issues, and they will die very quickly. I recommend aspen bedding, not dirt. Aspen bedding holds burrows very well, and it soaks up urine and feces smell pretty well. I actually have never had a problem with aspen bedding. I've never had a mold problem, and I've actually stretched bedding a little bit too long, and I still do not have that nasty of a cave. So aspen bedding would definitely be what I would recommend. Um, Lighting is optional. I honestly do not use it. My snakes are pretty much on a cycle of when I wake up and go to sleep. Lights are on, they're on. When they're off, they're off. Because, as long as you handle them, you get them out in the open, and they're not just sitting in a cage all day. Well, you really don't need to spend the extra $60 on lights. Now, it's not a horrible idea. But if you do get lights, you're going to put a timer to where when it's dark outside, the light shut off. Basically, long story short. So that's definitely your call. You can use I would not recommend a heat lamp. I would use a heat pad at the bottom of your aquarium. That's all you're going to need. Which brings me to the next point. You're going to want a cold side and a hot side. The water should be on the cold side, and their hiding spot, excuse me, YouTube, should be on the hot side. It's not a bad idea to have a hiding hole on the cold side as well. Snakes are cold-blooded, so they can't regulate their body temperature as we do. So they're going to move from the hot to the cold zone and in between to regulate their temperature. And that's why I recommended a colubrid. These guys, to my knowledge, I've had them for 4 years, and these guys stay freezing. They stay like 68 degrees. Is probably the coldest I've actually felt my colubrids. And I've only seen them really warm themselves up when they're digesting a meal. And after they pass that meal through feces, I don't see them staying warm. So that'll save you a lot of trouble there, because there's 3 major things that basically I've gone over. You're going to need a hot spot for your snake, which is going to need to exceed at least 85 degrees. You don't want to get any higher than really 86. That's a little bit too hot. Because it's going to be a little hot for them. The cold side, it's going to vary itself. So that'll kind of be optional for however you have your aquarium set up. Secondly, you definitely want to make sure you have water. Snakes are not prone to drinking out of puddles of water because of algae and bacteria buildup can make them sick. Especially being a cold-blooded animal, that can be a really big issue for them. So if you are leaving a water bowl in there, and not all my snakes have water bowls. Most of them I give them water by hand. Jesus, you can buy little squirt bottles that'll squirt into their mouth, or you can leave them a water bowl. Offer them water when you bring them out. If a snake drinks a lot of water, you're going to want to put that animal back up in the aquarium immediately, because when you're handling them and they have a belly full of water, it's the same thing as when they eat. They're going to regurgitate it, it's going to hurt their stomach and stress the animal out basically altogether. So anything after a big meal or a big drink of water, I definitely not recommend handling them. Other than that, that's pretty much the 101. Right size aquarium, heat spot, cold spot, you want to hide, aspen bedding, and you definitely want to handle them. The smaller the animal, the more frequently you want to hold them, but the amount of time you hold them needs to be a lot shorter. So, for example, this guy, Leroy is tough to say, but I'm pretty sure he's going to get a lot bigger than this. He can be out pretty much when I want, but I won't have a snake this size out for more than about an hour. Generally 30 to 45 minutes I'll put him back up. And I don't handle them in shed. I shouldn't be doing this. FYI. Um, if you've got an adult snake, hell, they can be out as long as you want. As long as their body temperature is pretty warm. You don't want them to get too cold. Another thing is, when it comes to head taming them, all you really got to do is you never want to go forward like this. Like I said, colubrid. That's why I recommend it. But you always want to start behind the head and work yourself up. And once you do that, you generally can get them pretty tame. But this guy just likes his chin scratched for some reason. He's weird. Yeah, I know you do. Hi. So that's pretty much that. Let me go show you a smaller version. Okay, Dana, so this is your basic aquarium size. This is a lemon glass ball python. Ow, just dropped the lid straight on my toe. That really hurt. Oh, that really did hurt. So this cage does look a little big for him. But he seems to be doing fine. So the thing about this size, should get an aquarium about like this. I would recommend a tad bit smaller, as to me, I'm not really liking the size. But with bedding and plants and stuff in that they just all got mites, so these cages are all torn apart. They don't have bedding or anything in them. But once I get all the decorations back in there, it actually be a little bit small. So this is what you would consider a juvenile, well, not a juvenile, sorry, baby bull python. They're very tiny, fit in the palm of my hand. So what I have here is I have my hot spot here, and obviously I have no heat pad over here. The heat pad, if I can find wherever it fell out of. There. So this is going to be the heat pad we use for him. As you can see, it clearly is big enough for the animal. This will go underneath the cage. You don't ever want a heat source that is accessible like this, because they are known to cook themselves to death. Because if you have a snake directly on this heat pad, supposed to underneath, you're going to raise the degree just enough to bug them. So that is Buttercup's setup. She's been in it for about a month and a half now. She's doing great. So that is what you basically have as a basic setup. You're going to have, this is a 2-in-1 right here. This is a water dish and a hive. They're really great. I would recommend them highly. On this side, as I said, the cool side, it wouldn't hurt to have a hive. So snakes work on two major things. They like to have a place to hide in the dark. You will see your snake active, but most of the time you're going to see them hidden away. But colubrids, what I suggested you to get, they're going to be a lot more active. So let me go and show you adults. Okay, so this is an adult bull python. As I said, bigger size. So she can be out really as long as I want her to, as long as her body temperature is staying warm enough. And there is several concerns for their temperature dropping. Prone to getting sick. As soon as they hit a certain temperature, they can get sick off anything. Digesting water, food, breathing, heart rate, everything has to do with them regulating their body temperature. If their temperature drops too low or gets too high, they're going to drop dead like a doornail. And that's one thing that I was mentioning, is colubrids are really easy because they can take a lot more stress. Bull pythons are actually quite a bit of work. It's not that they're that hard, but you really kind of need to have a little bit of experience with snakes to really maintain a bull python, because they have a lot of just basic issues. Shedding being one of the most issues that I've run into, to be honest. But she's a sweetheart. I've had her since 4/11/2012. She's my first snake. She's obviously very sweet. I have been bitten by her 2 times. Both times were my fault. But I mean, as I said, she's an absolute sweetheart. So I'm going to put her on her chill spot since I'm already bugged her. There we go. No going in the damn chair this time. So, I hope this video helped a bit. I know I'm leaving out like 120,000 different things. Just can't think of anything else to really tell you. Besides just handling your snake regularly, make sure they have fresh water. If water stands for more than 2 days, they're not going to drink it. They're going to change it out. So honestly, I wouldn't really recommend keeping a water bowl in their cage. As long as you know you can consistently make sure you offer them fresh water, not on a daily basis, but probably at least once or twice a week, would be the most part. Because snakes aren't the best drinkers, but you want to make sure that you physically see them drink. Because if you don't leave a water bowl in there and you actually, offer them water on a somewhat scheduled basis, at least you know they're drinking. So that's a plus on that side altogether. Now, actually, there is one thing I did leave out. So, I would recommend feeding your reptile inside its enclosure. And I don't care how many comments you get on this video or how much people are going to tell you differently. Once a snake strikes, constricts, and digests an animal, you don't want to touch that snake for 3 days. As I said, a baby, you can push it to 4. Because once you have that snake eat and take him out of a separate enclosure to put him into a secondary enclosure, you're going to risk getting bit, you're going to risk stressing your snake out, and that snake regurgitating the entire meal. So, number 2, I would recommend using tongs. I'm special. I didn't use tongs the whole time I had snakes, and yeah, it hurts. It didn't feel too good getting bit. I would use tongs. If you're using live, which is truly, unfortunately, what I recommend, you have 2 options. You can drop the animal in there, but as an animal lover, I don't like to stun my mice or my rats. I feel like a complete white trash piece of crap. You can either smack their head against the wall. The more humane way that I prefer to do is you can put them in a bag, a plastic bag. And you can twirl them into a circle for maybe about 35 seconds or 45 seconds to a minute. It won't kill them, but it will disorientate them enough to where the snake can strike without them actually having to defend themselves. And trust me, rats and mice can kill your snakes very quickly. They've got long enough teeth to pierce the head. If they bite the snake on the body, it's not a tremendous big deal. But they bite the snake on the head and their eye, you're going to have an issue. So that's what I'd recommend. So if you have any further questions, like I said, let me know. I will be glad to leave you a whole nother video. So once again, this was for Dayna. Everyone, hope this was helpful to anyone else. And any comments are appreciated. So everyone have a great night. Dayna, hope this was helpful.